rain-soaked road has finally delivered familiar footsteps to my humble story hall, and the old storyteller by the stove cannot help but smile. The tea has been warmed, the ink has been prepared, and even the sleepy wine jar seems eager to hear what adventures our returning travelers have brought back from the jianghu. Come closer, dear friends, for tonight's scroll carries the scent of danger, friendship, and a little mischief from the wandering paths. The ancient records of Azure Phoenix Nation speak of a mountain pass where greed, mercy, and destiny collided. Chen Ping'an arrived with his companions just as Zhang, Shanfeng, and Yuanxia stood against countless vagrant cultivators to protect a gentle earth bull from a cruel fate. With 50 lesser heat coins, a pair of flying swords, and the weight of his own principles upon his shoulders, Chen Ping'an now faces a trial that tests not only his strength, but the meaning of justice itself. With lesser heat coins worth 100 snowflake coins apiece, Chen Ping'an's 4 subordinates returned from Wasp Tail Ferry Station, carrying new purchases of their own. Zhu Lion had arrived at Old Dragon City with nothing. Yet by the time the group departed, a travel bag already hung from his shoulders. Now, as they prepared to leave the ferry station behind, that same bag had grown noticeably heavier. Zhu Lion now regarded himself as a scholar. And if a scholar wished to wander beneath heaven, how could he travel without a burden of books upon his back? From Wasp Tail Ferry Station, Chen Ping'an and his companions set out on foot toward the capital of Azure Phoenix Nation. Among the 3 nations surrounding the ferry station, Azure Phoenix Nation had made the first great move. 2 years earlier, its emperor had personally organized a magnificent liberation rite of water and land, a Buddhist ceremony intended to summon beings of higher realms to aid those still trapped in suffering. Lofty Sky Nation and Fortune Mountain Nation had answered the following year. Almost simultaneously, they each held a heavenly worship ceremony, as though the neighboring courts were openly competing for the favor of heaven. Their ceremonies attracted nearly every Taoist cultivator in the region and caught Azure Phoenix Nation completely unprepared. Yet the emperor of Azure Phoenix Nation refused to retreat. In the spring of this year, he intended to host a grand debate between Buddhism and Taoism. One of the 2 traditions would be chosen as the national religion, elevated above Confucianism itself, while the defeated side would be cast down to the lowest position. This was not merely a contest of scripture or doctrine. It was a struggle for imperial recognition, resources, influence, and the spiritual direction of an entire nation. The emperor had transformed faith into a chessboard, and every temple, sect, and cultivator was now a piece upon it. Because of this approaching debate, Chen Ping'an judged that Zhang, Shanfeng, and Yuanxia would most likely remain in the capital of Azure Phoenix Nation until at least the end of spring. The 3 neighboring nations possessed numerous Taoist temples, Buddhist monasteries, mountains, and rivers. Perhaps because of this, spiritual energy flowed through their lands in abundance. They were far from those barren territories that cultivators dismissed as Taoless regions. In fact, their spiritual energy was considerably richer than that of Watercombing Nation, where Chen Ping'an had once traveled. Back then, Chen Ping'an had been only a pure martial artist. He could sense that one region differed from another, but his understanding had been little more than instinct. Now, after refining the water seal into a bonded item and gaining the ability to slowly absorb spiritual energy, he could finally perceive the hidden currents running through heaven and earth. His advancement had not merely increased his strength, it had changed the way he experienced the world. Mountains were no longer only mountains, and rivers were no longer only rivers. Each landscape possessed its own breadth, density, and spiritual temperament. Of all the nations in the central region of Eastern, treasured vile continent that Chen Ping'an had crossed on foot, Colorful Garment Nation contained slightly more spiritual energy than the others. And the mention of Colorful Garment Nation brought another matter to mind. The female bone ghost who had entered into a contract with Chen Ping'an still resided inside the strange talisman stored within his pocket treasure. Chen Ping'an had never liked her. Since leaving Osmanthus Island, He had not allowed her to emerge from the talisman she called home even once. He intended to release her only after returning to Downtrodden Mountain. A formal mountain god guarded the surrounding mountains and rivers there, and Chen Ping'an believed that such authority would be enough to deter the female bone ghost from acting recklessly. The deities worshipped by ordinary nations of Eastern Treasured Vile Continent could not compare with the formally recognized mountain gods and river gods of the Great Lai Empire. The divine officials of Great Lai naturally stood one rank higher. That was the order of the present, but the future was already beginning to shift. The Great Lai Empire had conquered half of Eastern Treasured Vile Continent. All it lacked was formal approval from the Confucian school in Middle-earth Divine Continent. Once that recognition arrived, the deities of Great Lai would likely possess ranks equal to those recognized by Middle-earth Divine Continent itself. After all, half an entire continent would belong to Great Lai. The rise of an empire did not end with armies seizing cities. It reached into temples, mountains, rivers, and divine titles. When mortal borders changed, the hierarchy of gods changed with them. Great Lai was not merely conquering territory. It was rewriting the spiritual order of the continent. As Chen Ping'an's group left Wasptail Ferry Station, they noticed something unusual. Every traveler entering the Immortal Ferry Station carried a yellow paper talisman purchased at the entrance, whether that traveler was a Kai refiner or a martial artist. Once a traveler stepped forward with the talisman, a rippling doorway would appear, allowing them to pass through the formation. In essence, the talisman functioned much like the passports and travel documents used by mortal nations. Even so, Chen Ping'an found the arrangement novel. Among all the immortal ferry stations he had visited, this was the first that demanded payment merely to enter. Because they were departing rather than entering, Chen Ping'an and his companions had no need to purchase the yellow talismans. After stepping beyond the entrance, however, Chen Ping'an approached a fifth-tier Kai refiner stationed there and politely asked for an explanation. Chen Ping'an spoke with genuine courtesy. The guard, meanwhile, noticed the young traveler's steady aura and had just watched him walk out of the immortal ferry station. His expression softened, and he answered with a smile. A grand formation jointly created by naturalists and mechanists surrounded Wasptail Ferry Station. Earth immortals at the Golden Core tier or above could enter directly. Anyone below the Golden Core tier, however, was required to purchase an entry talisman costing 5 snowflake coins. Those who dared force their way through would immediately trigger the formation's alarm and draw the pursuit of Wasptail Ferry Station's patrolling guards. The yellow paper talisman itself was a derivative of the barrier-shattering talisman, specially commissioned from immortals of the talismanic branch to work with this particular formation. Chen Ping'an then asked why no other ferry station required such a talisman. The guard merely smiled, stamped one foot against the ground, and posed a question of his own.
Whose territory do you think you're standing on?
The entrance faced Azure Phoenix Nation. Chen Ping'an naturally replied that the land belonged to the nation's Imperial Tang clan. Before the guard could say anything more, realization dawned in Chen Ping'an's eyes. Inwardly, he could only sigh in admiration. The Emperor of Azure Phoenix Nation truly possessed an extraordinary talent for making money. A formation protected the ferry station. The talisman controlled access, and every traveler below the Golden Core tier paid 5 snowflake coins. Security, authority, and profit had been woven into a single system. Even cultivators could not escape the Emperor's grasp of commerce. The capital of Azure Phoenix Nation lay more than 800 kilometers away. Since over 2 months remained before the Buddhist and Taoist debate began during the 6th solar term, Chen Ping'an's group had more than enough time to continue on foot. Along the roads, they encountered Taoist temples and Buddhist monasteries of every size. None of the travelers could be called a truly devout follower of either tradition. Even so, whenever they entered a temple, Chen Ping'an and Pei Kaiyan would respectfully offer 3 sticks of incense before the gods and deities. Wise Zion believed in none of it. He usually remained outside the entrance and waited for the others. Zhu Lian was equally unconvinced, but he still accompanied Chen Ping'an and Pei Kaiyan inside. Liu Beixiang entered only Buddhist temples, where he sincerely offered incense to the bodhisattvas. Sui Yaobian did the opposite. She stepped only into Taoist temples and offered incense to the Taoist deities with genuine respect. Their choices revealed more than spoken declarations ever could. Wise Zion rejected belief outright. Zhu Lian remained skeptical but valued companionship. Liu Beixiang and Sui Yaobian each followed a separate spiritual inclination. Chen Ping'an, meanwhile, treated every shrine with courtesy without surrendering his judgment. Chen Ping'an had laid down strict rules for Pei Kaiyan. She was allowed to offer incense, but she could not casually pray for whatever entered her mind. Above all, she was forbidden from kowtowing before every bodhisattva and deity she encountered while making wish after wish. He also told her that if she ever felt a sincere and irresistible desire to make a wish, she could do so, but she would have to remember exactly what she wished for, which temple she visited, and which deity received her incense and kowtow. If that wish came true, she would be required to return and offer thanks, regardless of how distant the temple might be. To Chen Ping'an, reverence was inseparable from responsibility. A promise made before a deity could not be discarded once its reward had been received. He was teaching Pei Kaiyan that gratitude must survive long after desire has been satisfied. Faced with Chen Ping'an's grave expression, Pei Kaiyan became so frightened that she dared not make a single wish. She only offered incense and kept her thoughts to herself. In her mind, the consequences were terrifying. If she made a wish in Azure Phoenix Nation, and it later came true, she might be forced to rush all the way back from Dragon Spring Prefecture. She would either collapse from exhaustion or spend the entire journey drowning in regret until she cried herself to death. There was another rule. Pei Kaiyan was not allowed to borrow money to purchase incense. The coins had to come from her own pocket. Fortunately, Chen Ping'an assigned her several errands during their journey. The skinny little girl earned a few silver coins, exchanged them for copper coins, and finally possessed enough to buy incense whenever they visited a temple. Pei Kaiyan did not think Chen Ping'an was being miserly over a handful of copper coins. On the contrary, she increasingly felt that he treated her, his first disciple, with far more generosity than he showed Old Man Y and the others. That realization filled Pei Kaiyan with quiet happiness. Chen Ping'an was teaching her to earn before spending, to think before praying, and to repay every kindness she received. These lessons appeared small beside swordsmanship and cultivation, yet they were laying the foundation of the person she might one day become. During the 3rd solar term, the group crossed the wilderness of a small county in Azure Phoenix Nation. Without warnings, the mountains began to shudder and the earth groaned beneath their feet. They were more than 50 kilometers from the source, yet the tremors still rolled through the land. Far in the distance, towering plumes of dust and smoke swallowed heaven and earth. Within that storm of dust, the hazy outline of a colossal demon reared its head. Its roar carried unbearable pain across the wilderness, sending countless birds exploding from the forests in frantic clouds of wings. Chen Ping'an considered the situation, then ordered Wise Zion and Sui Yaobian to investigate. Their first task was not to hunt treasure or seek battle, but to determine whether innocent people had been harmed by the disturbance. Chen Ping'an's wounds had not fully healed. Within one of his acupoints, the lake of spiritual energy and his breath of true Kai remained in conflict. Although his martial cultivation stood at the 5th tier, the strength he could actually wield hovered around the 4th tier. His condition was especially dangerous because the problem lay within his own body. Spiritual energy and martial true Kai were both sources of strength, but when they obstructed one another, Every burst of power risked worsening his injuries. His realm had not fallen, yet his usable combat strength had been sharply restrained. Zian carried the dew armor known as West Mountain in his hand. Sui Yaobian bore her sword, deep infatuation, across her back. Together, they possessed both offensive and defensive strength. Even if danger awaited them, they could protect one another and withdraw without great difficulty. Chen Ping'an did not deliberately hasten his pace while waiting. When Zian and Sui Yaobian returned, they brought news of the disturbance. An earth bull hidden beneath that region for several hundred years had begun turning its enormous body and adjusting its position. Somehow, a large group of vagrant cultivators had discovered it. They surrounded the ancient creature, intending to kill it and seize the natural treasures contained within its body. But two meddlesome travelers had stepped forward to stop them. One was a young Taoist priest wielding a peach-wood sword. The other was a large bearded martial artist armed with a saber. Neither side had been willing to yield. Words failed, tempers rose, and the dispute became a battle. The difference in strength was severe. More than 20 vagrant cultivators were determined to slaughter the earth bull, and a golden core tier cultivator personally presided over their side. Against such a formation, the young Taoist priest and the bearded martial artist could have only one ending. Their decision was strategically foolish but morally unmistakable. They had placed themselves between a wounded creature and a force they could not defeat. There was no profit in their stand, no promise of victory, and almost no path of retreat. The instant Chen Ping'an heard the description of those two people, hesitation vanished. He slapped the sword nurturing gourd at his waist. First and 15th shot from the gourd in streaks of sword light, and Chen Ping'an leaped high into the air. Stepping upon the two flying swords, he strode through the sky like an immortal riding the wind and clouds. The four martial artists who had emerged from the picture scrolls exchanged puzzled glances. Pei Kaiyan tightened her grip on her hiking pole and looked from one person to another. She could not understand what had suddenly happened. Sui Yaobian vanished in a flash. Zhu Lion threw back his head and laughed before charging after her.
Another fight at last, how satisfying.
Zian lifted Pei Kaiyan onto his back and followed. Liu Beixiang silently joined the pursuit, though a trace of confusion remained in his heart. Why had Chen Ping'an, usually so measured, suddenly allowed emotion to overtake him? Could the two people ahead be his friends or acquaintances? Yet Chen Ping'an came from Clay Vase Alley in Jewel's small world. The people connected to his homeland included figures such as the 9th-tier martial artist Zhang Daifeng, the 10th-tier grandmaster Lai sword immortal Cao Zai, and heavenly Lord Zai Shi. His hometown seemed filled with an utterly unreasonable number of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Even if an immensely powerful Ascension-tier immortal suddenly appeared before them and claimed some connection to Chen Ping'an, Liu Beixiang and the others from the Lotus Flower-blessed land might not have been overly surprised. But if some supposedly minor figure of the middle 5 tiers appeared and introduced himself as Chen Ping'an's friend, they would be far more inclined to question the claim. The comparison was almost absurd, yet it revealed how mysterious Chen Ping'an appeared to his companions. His own cultivation was not overwhelming, but the people surrounding his past belonged to heights that ordinary cultivators could scarcely imagine. Despite the aid of 1st and 15th, Chen Ping'an could not unleash his full speed. His old wounds still burdened him, and the obstruction within his true Kai remained unresolved. As a result, his flight through the air was only roughly as fast as Sui Yaobian and the others racing across the ground. Ahead lay a gigantic mountain pass, buried beneath countless shards of shattered rock. At its center, an earth bull that had been forced to reveal its true form lay grievously wounded in a vast pool of blood. Before the fallen creature stood two battered figures, back to back. One was a young Taoist priest. The other was a large bearded martial artist. More than 20 Kai refiners circled them like a pack of hungry wolves. tightening the ring one measured step at a time. Then, beneath the gaze of every person present, a white-robed young man descended from the sky. Whether he seemed to ride the wind or command a flying sword, none could immediately tell. He appeared ethereal and transcendent, like a true immortal arriving through the clouds. Chen Ping'an swiftly descended. His feet touched the ground, and he took 5 or 6 nimble steps before walking directly toward the 2 disheveled defenders. No killing intent erupted from him. No grand declaration shook the mountain pass. He merely smiled and raised both hands toward them. Zhang, Shanfeng, and Yuanxia froze. For a heartbeat, neither could believe what stood before them. Zhang Shanfeng even rubbed his eyes. Only after confirming that the white-robed figure was no illusion did delight ripple through his limpid gaze. The young Taoist priest and the bearded martial artist each raised one hand. They exchanged high fives with the esteemed young immortal who had appeared at the very edge of disaster. The exhaustion in their faces seemed to vanish. Their dispirited posture straightened, and fresh energy surged through them. The enemy had not disappeared, their injuries had not healed, and the golden core cultivator still remained nearby. Yet the arrival of one trusted friend changed the entire weight of the battlefield. This was the true power of companionship in the martial world. Chen Ping'an had not yet drawn a sword, but Zhang Shanfeng and Yuanxia already felt that the hopeless battle had become survivable. Strength could be counted in realms and techniques, but courage often depended on who stood beside you. Chen Ping'an looked at his 2 friends. His eyes shone even brighter than Pei Kaiyan's remarkable gaze, within which the sun and moon seemed to dwell. He seized Zhang Shanfeng's and Yuanxia's hands and laughed from the depths of his heart.
I knew it. In this whole world, only my 2 friends, Zhang Shanfeng and Yuanxia, would put so much effort into such a thankless task.
And perhaps that was precisely why Chen Ping'an treasured them. They had not protected the Earth Bull because victory was likely or because treasure awaited them. They acted because leaving it to die felt wrong. In a world ruled by strength and profit, such foolishness was rarer than any heavenly treasure. High above the scarred battlefield, a Kai raffiner who appeared to be in his 30s stood unsteadily upon a gigantic boulder. His robes were disordered, his breathing ragged, and after suppressing the turmoil inside his body for several breaths, he quietly spat out a mouthful of blood. The battle against the Earth Bull had already strayed far beyond their original calculations. One accident had followed another, and now unfamiliar cultivators had descended into the chaos. When this was over, assuming they survived, he would have to settle accounts with the others and demand additional compensation from the Golden Core Tier Earth Immortal who had hired them. Such a demand would hardly be excessive. The Earth Bull was a walking treasury, yet its golden core, horns, tendons, and every truly priceless portion would inevitably fall into the Golden Core Tier cultivators' hands. The hired vagrant cultivators would receive little more than organs, flesh, and whatever scraps remained after the feast. Worse still, the mission had somehow grown by 2 additional battles. If the Earth Immortal refused to add a few lesser heat coins to their reward, then he could hardly blame them for leaping about and cursing his ancestors behind his back. Of course, the man on the boulder was named Yuanxia. He had been born among remote mountains, into a family that had felled timber generation after generation. No renowned master had guided him, no ancestral hall had sheltered him, and no immortal lineage had prepared a road beneath his feet. He was a vagrant cultivator without a fixed residence, forever chasing opportunity across mountains and rivers. Only last year had Yuanxia crossed the first truly perilous threshold of cultivation and advanced into the abode tier. The abode tier stood at the very bottom of the middle 5 tiers. Yet for a cultivator with no sect, no teacher, and no inheritance, that single step was no less than climbing from the mortal earth into the clouds. From that moment onwards, Lu Yongzhen was finally valuable enough to be noticed. An abode-tier vagrant cultivator could be recruited by an immortal clan with a proper lineage, appointed as a guest elder by a noble house, or employed by the imperial court of a mortal nation. It was not freedom, and it was not glory, but it meant that his cultivation finally carried a price. In the harsh world of unaffiliated cultivators, being worth money was itself a form of survival. Lu Yongzhen dreamed of encountering fortune greater than the day he had stumbled upon a dead cultivator, and that cultivator's belongings inside a mountain cave. He longed to obtain a true immortal scripture, one that explained a great Tao capable of carrying him toward the realm of earth immortals. He did not dare demand too much from the heavens, even if he could never become a lofty golden core tier earth immortal. He would be content merely to approach that threshold, to stand close enough to place one hand upon the door. Yet hidden beneath that modest dream was another wish, one so extravagant that even Lu Yongzhen regarded it as madness. He was already 60 years old, but some part of him still hoped that a divine fated opportunity might descend from the heavens and transform him into a sword cultivator with a bonded flying sword. Thus, when the young esteemed immortal in white descended to the ground, and 2 streaks of crimson light returned to the vermilion wine gourd at his waist, Lu Yongzhen's eyes instantly turned red. Flying swords. Bonded flying swords. There was an old saying in the cultivation world: a 60-year-old abode tier Kai refiner was already old, yet a 100-year-old abode tier sword cultivator could still be called young. Could this white-robed youth be a powerful senior who had cultivated some secret art and restored his youthful appearance? If he were a Dragon Gate tier sword cultivator, the situation would become disastrously complicated. And if he were concealing a golden core tier cultivation base, then this meticulously arranged hunt might end not with the death of the Earth Bull, but with the bodies of vagrant cultivators scattered across the broken dragon vein. Lu Yongzhen's fear was not cowardice. A sword cultivator could unleash terrifying destructive power, ignore ordinary defensive logic, and decide life or death within a single breath. Against such an opponent, underestimating one realm or even one hidden technique could erase an entire group before they understood what had happened. After a brief surge of envy and alarm, Lu Yongzhen forced his emotions back beneath the surface. Whatever wild dream had stirred inside him, the person standing before them was not a vision from a scripture. He was a living sword cultivator who had crossed biting astral winds and murderous currents of aura to arrive here. And apart from their sharp killing methods, sword cultivators possessed another quality that made vagrant cultivators even more wary. Across Eastern treasured vile continent, nearly every sword cultivator was treated as a precious seed by the immortal forces of the mountains. Harm one even slightly, and the ancestral hall standing behind that sword cultivator might immediately turn its gaze toward the offender. Killing an ordinary vagrant cultivator might create one enemy. Injuring a treasured sword cultivator could provoke an entire lineage. The blade before them was dangerous, but the shadow behind that blade might be even more terrifying. Without moving his head, Lu Yongzhen swept his gaze across the battlefield from the corners of his eyes. Apart from the golden core tier Earth Immortal, who remained hidden behind an illusion technique and concealed his true appearance, the other vagrant cultivators were reacting much as Lu Yongzhen had expected. Some were even more timid than he was. Their convictions had already collapsed, and they hurriedly put away their weapons to display goodwill toward the young sword cultivator. They feared that the uninvited guest might choose the weakest among them, cut that person down with one stroke, and use the corpse as a warning to everyone else. No one wished to become the chickens slaughtered before a gathering of frightened monkeys. Yet not everyone had been intimidated. Several cultivators carefully concealed the flames burning in their eyes, but their hands, their stances, and the subtle circulation of their spiritual energy betrayed them. They wanted to accomplish something astonishing, to kill the young sword cultivator together with the earth bull. If they succeeded, they could become filthy rich in a single night. If disaster followed, they could flee Azure Phoenix Nation and never return. For rootless cultivators, exile was less frightening than poverty. They owned no ancestral halls, no sacred mountains, and no territory they could not abandon. Since the immortal clans already regarded them as wild dogs, what difference did it make which wilderness they called home? Besides, if the heavens truly collapsed, there was still a golden core tier Earth immortal standing behind them, or so they hoped. Almost simultaneously, Yuanxia and the others stole glances toward their mysterious employer. The Earth Immortal's identity and background remained unknown. Half a year earlier, he had suddenly appeared and hired Yuanxia along with the other vagrant cultivators. He had offered few explanations, saying only that a great Earth Bull demon was hiding inside an ancient shattered dragon vein. The beast had concealed itself there for more than 200 years, cultivating until its strength became comparable to that of a Dragon Gate tier Kai refiner. According to the Earth Immortal, if the Earth Bull advanced one step further and formed a golden core, it would begin twisting through the land, shattering the surrounding region and bringing a calamity upon Azure Phoenix Nation. Prefectures and counties within 500 kilometers would be engulfed. Countless ordinary people would die, and an appalling tragedy would stain the nation. Therefore, the beast had to be suppressed and killed before it reached the golden core tier. Naturally, all of this was supposedly being done for the people of Azure Phoenix Nation. At the time, Yuanxia had been traveling with two temporary companions, a brother and his younger sister. While searching for treasure, the three of them had nearly burst into laughter when they heard the golden core tier cultivator's righteous explanation. Had they not feared the Earth Immortal's cultivation base, their laughter would certainly have echoed through the mountains. No experienced vagrant cultivator believed that a golden core tier expert had gathered them purely out of compassion. The noble justification merely covered a simpler truth. The Earth Bull was valuable, the hunt was dangerous, and the employer preferred that others bleed first. Yuanxia had formed a temporary alliance with that brother and sister because the younger woman possessed an extraordinarily rare profession. She was an earth cultivator. Now, as tension gathered around the white-robed sword cultivator, the siblings were already shuffling discreetly toward Yuanxia. It was largely because of Yuanxia and the female earth cultivator that the three of them had earned the right to share in the Earth Bull's spoils. Yuanxia specialized in formations. During the hunt, his formations suppressed the immense disturbance created whenever the Earth Bull shifted its body beneath the shattered dragon vein. In other words, he concealed the battle from the proper immortal clans nearby, preventing them from noticing the spiritual upheaval and arriving at the final moment to seize the fruit of the vagrant cultivator's labor. His formations were not designed to kill, yet their strategic value was immense. Without concealment, every wound inflicted on the Earth Bull might merely prepare a treasure for some powerful clan waiting beyond the horizon. Yuanxia's task was to ensure that the hunters were not robbed after exhausting themselves in the hunt. Even so, the female Earth cultivator was the true reason the Golden Core tier Earth Immortal had hired their group. The employer had discovered only the approximate region where the Earth Bull was hiding. Despite his lofty realm, he had failed to identify the beast's exact location. That failure created an opportunity for the woman, who possessed almost no ability to fight but could read the hidden movements of the earth. She wore bright-colored garments and was only a fifth-tier Kai refiner. Her aptitude could not be considered exceptional, though among fellow vagrant cultivators it was at least respectable. During the months they had worked together, she and Yuanxia had developed a favorable impression of one another. They could not be called intimate friends, but they had dealt honestly enough to exchange thoughts without excessive suspicion. Using her mind's voice, She sent a cautious question directly to Liu Yangzhen.
These newcomers are hostile toward us. They are clearly companions of those two people. What should we do?
Liu Yangzhen stroked his chin, keeping his expression calm while the battlefield shifted around them.
We will observe first and act according to the situation.
The woman nodded. Of all the vagrant cultivators involved in the mission, she had enjoyed the most privileged position. Once the fierce battle began, she was far more relaxed than her brother or Liu Yangzhen. It would not have been wrong to say that she had almost nothing left to do. Her profession belonged to a side branch of the school of naturalists. She was an earth cultivator, born not for direct slaughter, but for listening to the buried veins and subtle breaths beneath mountains and rivers. Her elder brother stood nearby, an 8-foot-tall man carrying a pair of broadaxes. Azure armor covered his massive frame, and countless talismans had been inscribed across its surface. Blood caked his face, though fortunately the injuries were only external. His aura remained steady, and both axes were still firmly gripped in his hands. Through a chain of coincidences and fated encounters, the burly man had chosen the path of a military cultivator, yet he possessed the form of one rather than the true essence. He had obtained only a third-rate immortal secret scripture, one that taught him to temper his physique and stabilize his soul. Combined with the Azure armor, a spirit tool purchased in his youth at the cost of nearly all his wealth, the scripture had transformed him into a tiger, granted a pair of wings. Because of this, he had gained a respectable reputation throughout the border regions of the Fortune Mountain Nation. Yet the one who truly earned money for the siblings was not the imposing warrior in talisman-covered armor. It was his younger sister, who could barely defend herself in a direct confrontation. This was one of the cultivation world's quieter truths. Raw strength drew the eye, but rare expertise often commanded the greater price. A broadaxe could break open a sealed chamber, yet only the right senses could find that chamber beneath 1,000 mountains. Kai refiners, especially vagrant cultivators without teachers or inherited methods, were extremely methodical when searching for treasure. Their lives depended upon patience, fragments of knowledge, and the ability to turn insignificant clues into a path toward fortune. True fated opportunities of the great Tao might descend through sheer luck, but one could not spend a lifetime waiting for heaven to drop an immortal treasure at one's feet. Instead, vagrant cultivators examined county chronicles for old legends, studied geomancy maps hidden and guarded by local officials, and questioned woodsmen, fishermen, and hunters who regularly entered remote mountains and rivers. Only by gathering countless scattered threads could they hope to weave a road towards sudden wealth. For this reason, geographical officials and earth cultivators were highly sought after. The former could observe the manifestations of heaven and earth and use astrological divination to judge fortune and disaster. Earth cultivators, meanwhile, excelled at locating dragon veins and perceiving the slightest changes in spiritual energy. Their senses toward the land were so keen that movements hidden from ordinary Kai refiners could appear to them as clearly as ripples spreading across still water. Finding a treasure, however, was merely the beginning. Most natural treasures in the world were guarded by ghosts, spirits, demons, ancient restrictions, or creatures that had cultivated beside them for countless years. For vagrant cultivators, this was the most dangerous obstacle of all. Unlike immortal clans and mountain forces, itinerant and vagrant cultivators usually traveled alone. They searched alone, schemed alone, and often had to fight alone when treasure finally appeared. An immortal clan could mobilize its disciples and elders the moment it discovered a valuable opportunity. If its own strength proved insufficient, it could call upon allied forces and exchange favors for assistance. With numbers, formations, inherited treasures, and powerful seniors behind them, such clans rarely failed to seize what they desired. A vagrant cultivator who discovered a treasure beyond his strength had only one practical choice: seek help from other vagrant cultivators and divide the spoils. Otherwise, after risking his life to uncover the opportunity, he might still leave empty-handed or never leave at all. One might ask why these cultivators did not simply report their discoveries to an immortal clan. Would that not increase their chances of success? There were two answers. First, even when a vagrant cultivator was the original discoverer of a natural treasure or hidden treasury, an immortal clan would often leave him only scraps after taking everything truly valuable. Second, and far more tragically, the clan's cultivators might silence him once he had revealed the location. To cooperate with a great clan was to place both treasure and life in another's hands. If the reward for loyalty was uncertain, but the value of silence was obvious, assassination became an entirely reasonable calculation for those with power. Within the cultivation world, vagrant cultivators were widely belittled and resented. To the orthodox immortals of the mountains, they resembled wandering ghosts among Kai Raffiner's parasites who consumed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth without answering to ancestral law. They were frequently categorized as sinister cultivators willing to descend to any depth for resources. That was precisely why the late unpolished jade tier cultivator from Wasp Tail Ferry Station had been held in such esteem among the vagrant cultivators of Eastern Treasured Vile Continent. He had once spoken aloud the wish buried in the hearts of countless cultivators without sex or lineages.
I just want to stand up straight and eat a decent meal.
Those simple words carried the weight of an entire class of cultivators. They did not all yearn to dominate the world. Many merely wanted dignity, the right to cultivate without kneeling, to earn resources without being cheated, and to live without being hunted like vermin. Cultivators whose names were recorded in two places, the ancestral hall of their force and the imperial court governing the surrounding territory, were considered official immortals. Those whose names appeared in neither record were classified as vagrant cultivators or itinerant cultivators. Imperial courts and local governments disliked such people. Vagrant cultivators had unpredictable tempers, caused trouble without warning, displayed little loyalty, and often left officials to clean up whatever chaos remained after they departed. This fear was especially intense when dealing with vagrant cultivators of the upper 5 tiers. Nearly all of those who climbed so high without a lineage had become terrifyingly decisive when killing enemies. They were fierce figures who had carved their paths through repeated bloodshed. Their temperaments were often stranger and more volatile than those of ordinary vagrant cultivators, and many traveled the world without sympathy, restraint, or concern for consequences. Yet it would still be unjust to regard every vagrant cultivator as an outlaw who casually trampled upon human lives. Nevertheless, immortal mountain forces, mortal imperial courts, and reputable factions all used the same broad brush. Vagrant cultivators were described as reckless, untrustworthy, and indifferent to life. The accusation was repeated day after day and year after year, until vagrant cultivators became like rats racing through crowded streets, creatures everyone felt entitled to strike. Reputation had become its own cage. The more society treated vagrant cultivators as criminals, the more they were forced into secrecy and ruthless competition. Then their desperation was used as proof that the original judgment had been correct. Those vagrant cultivators who became sufficiently powerful usually sought some legitimate position within an imperial court. Others accepted the title of guest elder from a mountain force, even when the appointment existed largely in name. Their names would then enter official records, transforming them into recognized immortals. Yet beneath the new title and respectable robes, many continue to think and behave exactly as they had when wandering alone. returning to Liu Yongzhen and his two allies. Their small group was ordinary almost to the point of being pitiful. Liu Yongzhen was a formation cultivator with limited offensive ability. The elder brother was an incomplete militarian cultivator who excelled mainly at enduring attacks. The younger sister was an earth cultivator with virtually no combat strength. Their survival depended not on overwhelming strength, but on cooperation. One concealed the battlefield, one bore the enemy's attacks, and one found what others could not. Separately, each had glaring weaknesses. Together, they possessed just enough value to earn a place beside stronger cultivators. Not far away, however, another group of 7 or 8 vagrant cultivators was quietly evaluating the new situation. Their eyes moved between the young sword cultivator and the golden courtier employer, and beneath their caution lurked traces of ferocity. Most members of this group already knew one another. They were Kai raffiners from regions bordering Azure Phoenix Nation, likely drawn here by the liberation rite of water and land and the heavenly worship ceremony, hoping to test their luck amid the gathering of cultivators and opportunities. They had made substantial contributions during the fight against the Earth Bull. Among them was a militarian cultivator who specialized in close combat, forcing himself into the Earth Bull's killing range and holding its attention while the others attacked. There was also a heretical Taoist priest skilled in talismans and puppetry, along with a ghost cultivator who wielded a soul-summoning banner. Another burly man possessed an unusual bonded item consisting of 3 shields: a rattan shield, a bird shield, and a metal talisman shield. Whenever one of his companions failed to dodge in time, those 3 shields became the wall standing between that cultivator and death. The group even included an old sword cultivator, though he remained at the 5th tier. Whenever his flying sword emerged from its acupoint, it condensed into a tangible weapon. The blade was pitch black, approximately 2 feet long, wrapped in wind and lightning, and saturated with a dense sanguinary oil. Yet because the old man had not reached the abode tier, and had not created a genuine internal abode, his reserves of spiritual energy were painfully limited. He could not sustain the flying sword for long. Most of the time, he launched a single decisive strike, immediately recalled the weapon into his acupoint, and nurtured it with spiritual energy drawn from snowflake coins while waiting for another opening. His method revealed the cruel relationship between realm and technique. The flying sword possessed extraordinary lethality, but without an internal abode to support it, every attack became a costly wager. He could strike like thunder only once, then had to retreat into silence before his own spiritual energy failed him. Even with that limitation, nearly half of the severe wounds carved into the Earth Bull's enormous body had been inflicted by the old sword cultivator's black flying sword. Nevertheless, he was not the true backbone of the group. That position belonged to an elder dressed in black robes, seated upon a gigantic black fox with 5 tails. The black-robed elder slowly turned his head and looked toward the golden courtier cultivator hiding in the background. He said nothing, yet his meaning was unmistakable. The Earth Immortal was the one who had promised lesser heat coins in exchange for suppressing and killing the Earth Bull. The vagrant cultivators had already fought hard, suffered injuries, and completed every task demanded of them. Now a sword cultivator of unknown strength had entered the battlefield and disrupted the entire plan. Whether they retreated or continued fighting was no longer a decision the hired cultivators were willing to make for free. If the Golden Courtier Earth Immortal ordered them to provoke the young sword cultivator, then the handful of lesser heat coins originally agreed upon would no longer be enough. If he chose retreat instead, then every party could simply depart along a different road. After all, the cultivators had already received their deposits. The black-robed elder's silent glance placed the burden exactly where it belonged. The employer possessed the highest cultivation, controlled the mission, and stood to claim the greatest reward. If he wanted others to gamble their lives against an unknown sword cultivator, then he would first have to reveal how much those lives were worth to him. At this moment, the Earth Bull was no longer the only beast trapped upon the battlefield. Greed, fear, resentment, and calculation had formed an invisible cage around every cultivator present. One command from the hidden Earth Immortal could send them charging forward, but one wrong judgment might also turn this carefully planned hunt into a slaughter no amount of lesser heat coins could repay. High above the blood-soaked mountain pass, a golden core tier Earth Immortal hovered within the drifting mist. Strangely, he did not communicate with the 20-odd vagrant cultivators through his mind. Instead, he fixed his concealed gaze directly upon Chen Ping'an, as though the young man alone held the power to decide whether this hunt would end in wealth or blood.
Are you determined to stop us from obtaining these treasures? If you and your companions withdraw from the mountain pass and cease interfering, then once we kill this Earth Bull, I will give you 10% of my share. I will exchange it for snowflake coins and personally deliver them to you afterward.
By then, Zhang, Shanfeng, and Yuanxia had already explained the situation, allowing Chen Ping'an to grasp the heart of the conflict. The enormous creature lying behind him in a spreading pool of blood was indeed a demon. Yet it was not some vicious scourge that delighted in overturning mountains or burying cities. Earth bulls were gentle by nature, and the calamities commonly described as earth bulls twisting their bodies had nothing to do with this wounded creature. For more than 200 years, the Earth Bull had hidden within this mountain pass. It had not come to devour travelers or seize territory. Its purpose was to mend the shattered dragon vein beneath the land, hoping that once the vein recovered, it could make this place its future residence. All those years, it had lain across the mountain pass in its true form. Its vast body resembled a sprawling mountain range covered in cliffs, ancient stones, and dense green vegetation. To ordinary eyes, it had never been a demon at all. It had simply been part of the land. The genuine disasters attributed to earth bulls were usually caused by other beings. Dragon-headed and fish-bodied owl, enormous mole crickets, ancient earthworms, or giant toads slumbering deep underground. These mountain spirits and water beasts preferred silence. Relying upon their innate abilities, they intertwined their gigantic bodies with the surrounding mountains and slowly absorbed the spiritual energy hidden within the earth. Yet despite their size and power, they feared the thunder of spring. The true danger emerged when such creatures reached the abode tier of the middle 5 tiers, or approached the moment of forming a golden core. Their advancement demanded a terrifying quantity of spiritual energy. And because their bodies were fused with the fortune of the mountains, every breakthrough disturbed the balance of the earth itself. Cultivation, in such cases, was not merely an individual ascent, it was a gamble involving entire regions and countless mortal lives. When their great Tao opportunities arrived, the buried ferocity within these spirits could erupt. Thus were born the legends of earth bulls turning their bodies, and owl turning their backs, movements capable of tearing open the mortal world. At the beginning of the hunt, Zhang, Shanfeng, and Yuanxia had also been invited to participate. The Golden Core Earth Immortal had wanted them to join the surrounding cultivators and help suppress the great demon. Zhang Shanfeng's cultivation was not especially high, but his knowledge of mountain spirits and water beasts was extraordinary. He recognized the Earth Bull's origin and understood its innately peaceful temperament. Because of that, he refused the invitation. The most troubling possibility was that this Earth Bull had already reached the Dragon Gate tier and stood only a single step away from forming a golden core. Zhang Shanfeng understood a simple truth that the treasure seekers ignored. Even a clay bodhisattva would develop a temper after being struck repeatedly. Even the most honest person would rage if relentlessly hunted. A demon driven to the edge of death would be no different, and unlike an ordinary person, its final fury could shake the foundations of the land. If the Earth Bull suffered mortal wounds and triggered a violent reaction from the Earth veins, then the mountain pass would witness a true Earth Bull turning its body. Earthquakes could rip through an area extending at least 500 kilometers, and tens of thousands of innocent people in the two neighboring prefectures might die without ever learning why. Yuanxia had wandered across the world and seen many strange affairs. He did not waste his breath proclaiming righteousness or condemning the cultivators for hunting a demon. Instead, he calmly explained the consequences of their actions. He hoped the abode tier cultivator who had recruited them would relay a message to the mastermind. They should spend additional silver and hire more formation cultivators. Even if they insisted upon killing the Earth Bull, sufficient formations could at least reduce the damage caused by its final struggle. At the very least, tens of thousands of mortals might be spared from death, injury, and displacement. The hunters could treat the expense as spending wealth to accumulate virtue. The abode tier cultivator patted his chest and solemnly promised that he would deliver the warning. Yuanxia pretended to be satisfied and exchanged a little harmless conversation with the man. But once the cultivator departed, Yuanxia and Zhang Shanfeng secretly followed him to investigate. What they discovered confirmed their worst fears. Among more than 20 cultivators serving the Golden Core Earth Immortal, there was only one formation cultivator. That single detail revealed the hunters' true priorities. They had prepared weapons to kill the demon, but almost nothing to protect the surrounding land. To them, the Earth Bull's body was treasure. The lives beyond the mountain pass were merely distant numbers. After a brief discussion, Zhang Shanfeng and Yuanxia separated to complete two urgent tasks. Yuanxia traveled to the nearest mountain force and explained everything clearly. He did not ask the official immortals to openly oppose the Golden Core expert and create a deadly feud. He only hoped they could exert pressure or prepare methods to suppress the earthquake that might soon arrive. Zhang Shanfeng possessed a legitimate identity as a Taoist priest belonging to Mount Longhu's branch on complete Reed continent. Using that status, he entered the government office and met the local governor. He urged the imperial court of Azure Phoenix Nation to treat the matter seriously. Ideally, the emperor would dispatch a guest elder to oversee the situation, even sending reinforcements to assist the Golden Core Earth Immortal and win his favor would be acceptable. The method did not matter. What mattered was speed. Several large formations had to be established near the Earth Bull's hiding place before the battle reached its final stage. The governor was easygoing enough to listen and agreed to immediately report the danger to the imperial court. He would also request aid from the immortal clan within his jurisdiction and use a flying sword to deliver the message as quickly as possible. Yet the governor was no naive official. Pragmatic and shrewd, he demanded that Zhang Shanfeng leave behind two valuable items as collateral. If the warning proved false or fabricated, he would otherwise have no way to explain his actions to the emperor or the mountain cultivators. Zhang Shanfeng and Yuanxia both considered the request reasonable. They surrendered the Dao sword True Martial and a short saber they had obtained from Colorful Garment Nation. And after all that efforts, the two men had still ended up trapped in the mountain pass, standing between a dying demon and a crowd that would not listen. Reason could not persuade the vagrant cultivators. They pursued material profit, and in their eyes, there was nothing shameful or unnatural about that. Zhang Shanfeng and Yuanxia were simply blocking the path to treasure a crime that, to such people, seemed offensive to both gods and men. The vagrant cultivators also possessed their own harsh logic. They were hunting a demon in an empty wilderness, not murdering merchants in a city or using immortal artifacts to torment mortals. Official immortals killed demons for resources all the time. Why, then, should wandering cultivators be condemned for seeking wealth through the same blade? To them, the young beardless Taoist priest and the large bearded martial artist were merely strangers making outrageous claims about an earthquake extending 500 kilometers. Who were these two men, and why should anyone sacrifice a fortune based on their warnings? Zhang Shanfeng and Zhu Yuanxia had eventually returned in secret and witnessed the battle themselves. Countless rocks and ancient trees had tumbled from the Earth Bull's back as it awakened beneath the assault. Even then, the gentle great demon's first instinct had not been to fight. Surrounded by more than 20 vagrant cultivators, it tried to flee. It battled only to clear a path, but the hunters pursued it relentlessly and inflicted wound after wound. Only after escape became impossible did the Earth Bull finally turn and counterattack. The mountain pass erupted into a colossal struggle. With no other choice, Zhang Shanfeng and Zhu Yuanxia stepped between the hunters and their prey. They knew that if the Earth Bull suffered enough damage to abandon its mountain-like body and reveal its true form, a creature no larger than an ordinary bull, then the crisis would reach the point of no return. At that final moment, the Earth Bull would risk everything and unleash its strongest attack. The hunters might die, but so would countless people beyond the mountain. The wounded demon had hesitated when it saw two humans risking their lives to defend it. It understood that they were not acting solely out of concern for its survival. Their greater fear was the calamity its death might cause. Even so, after a long internal struggle, the Earth Bull abandoned the idea of mutual destruction. It remained motionless in its own blood and allowed its vitality to slowly drain away. Its choice carried a bitter dignity. The demon had been hunted for its body, misunderstood for its nature, and forced toward death, yet in the end, it still refused to drag innocent lives into the grave with it. In that moment, the supposed monster displayed more restraint than many of the humans surrounding it. Chen Ping'an looked toward his two old companions. The vagrant cultivators had not used their full strength to kill Zhang Shanfeng and Zhu Yuanxia. They had most likely believed victory was already within reach and saw no need to risk unnecessary casualties. Zhang Shanfeng had suffered several external wounds. Blood still flowed from the shoulder, pierced by a sword cultivator's bonded flying sword. He had applied medicine, but the effect was minimal. The wound had likely reached his tendons and bones, for a bonded flying sword was far more terrifying than a merely sharp weapon. Beside him, Zhu Yuanxia's enormous beard was soaked with blood. The strands had clumped together in a manner that would almost have looked comical, had the situation not been so grim. Seeing Chen Ping'an and the four powerful martial artists accompanying him, the Golden Core Earth Immortal finally softened his stance, if only slightly. Fearing that Chen Ping'an might accept the offer, Zhang Shanfeng immediately seized his arm.
We can't agree to that.
The Earth Immortal smiled, his tone carrying the patience of a man who believed the outcome had already been decided.
The demon has already surrendered and accepted death. It shows no sign of making a final struggle. Chivalrous cultivators, and you, esteemed immortal, why insist on doing something unnecessary? Why continue opposing us?
Too weak to remain standing, Zhu Yuanxia lowered himself onto the ground. His face was dark, one hand gripping the hilt of his saber, while the other stroked his blood-matted beard.
What he says is true. Even so, I still feel rather disgruntled.
The large bearded martial artist turned and looked at the dying Earth Bull.
I feel as though I would be betraying its trust.
Zhang Shanfeng released a quiet sigh. He sheathed his peach wood sword and loosened his grip on Chen Ping'an's arm.
But it seems we have no choice except to accept, do we?
His words sounded like helpless lamentation, yet beneath them rested a question meant only for Chen Ping'an. Everyone present had noticed Chen Ping'an's four subordinates from the moment they arrived. Wei Ziyan, Sui Yaobian, Lu Baixiang, and Zhu Lian were all pure martial artists, and each possessed an astonishing aura. Their presence was the real reason the Golden Core Earth Immortal had chosen negotiation over immediate violence. Courtesy in the cultivation world often appeared only when both sides possessed enough strength to make slaughter expensive. Chen Ping'an gently patted Zhang Shanfeng's uninjured shoulder.
I'll deal with this problem.
Zhang Shanfeng froze for a moment. Then, despite his injuries, he broke into a grin.
The two of us won't complain no matter what you decide. We won't make things difficult for you, honestly.
Chen Ping'an nodded. He then raised his eyes toward the figure suspended in the mountain mist.
I'm curious, which immortal force do you belong to? Or do you serve one of Azure Phoenix Nation's chief military governor offices?
Now seated cross-legged, Yuanxia revealed a knowing smile. Chen Ping'an had grown far more cunning since their last meeting. With a single question, he had touched the very issue troubling Yuanxia, the Earth Immortal's hidden background. Yet Yuanxia could not sense much improvement in Chen Ping'an's martial cultivation. The young man still appeared to be at the third tier. That was hardly shameful. Only 2 years had passed since they parted. Chen Ping'an was merely 17 by local age, reckoning 16 by ordinary Western counting. Possessing such a stable third-tier foundation at his age was already enough to earn him the title of martial arts prodigy. What Yuanxia could not see was that cultivation realms alone no longer measured Chen Ping'an's danger. The young man's true growth lay in his judgment, his composure, and the people now willing to stand behind him. The vagrant cultivators continued surrounding Chen Ping'an, Zhang Shanfeng, and Yuanxia like a pack of wolves closing around wounded prey. But why Zion, Sui Yaobian, Lu Baixiang, and Zhu Lion did not enter the circle to stand beside their master? Instead, they remained outside the vagrant cultivators' formation. The arrangement silently reversed the entire battlefield. The vagrant cultivators believed they had surrounded 3 people, but from another perspective, 4 unfathomable martial artists had already surrounded all of them. The Golden Core Earth Immortal smiled, without answering Chen Ping'an's question.
Who I am has no bearing on whether you accept my offer.
How many snowflake coins is this Earth Bull worth in your eyes?
The Earth Immortal pondered briefly before answering with apparent sincerity.
The market price of an Earth Bull is approximately 20 to 30 lesser heat coins. However, Earth Bulls and their kin are extremely difficult to find and capture, so demand greatly exceeds supply. Their true value is nearly twice that amount. That is a fair assessment. In other words, this Earth Bull is worth approximately 5,000 snowflake coins. What do you think? Are you calculating the value of your 10% share, or do you believe 10% insults your strength and you want 20% or even more?
Though the Earth Immortal continued smiling, every vagrant cultivator heard the menace hidden within his words. Negotiation was reaching its end. He was preparing to strike. A vast, invisible might poured from his golden core and pressed down across the mountain pass. Even the black-robed elders seated upon the giant black fox found breathing difficult. Once a cultivator formed a golden core, they could borrow the power of heaven and earth. This was not merely stronger spiritual energy. It was a qualitative change. The Earth Immortal no longer stood alone. Mountain mist, wind, and surrounding spiritual energy all became extensions of his authority. Chen Ping'an remained calm beneath that pressure.
Although you people are being unreasonable, it was indeed my 2 friends who created the current situation while attempting to stop you. Fortunately, the worst outcome has not occurred. The Earth Bull has not turned its body or caused a massive earthquake. Since that is the case, we should calm ourselves and discuss this properly. Since you are determined to obtain the Earth Bull, we will calculate its value according to the market price of 50 lesser heat coins that you just stated. After subtracting the 10% you offered me, 45 lesser heat coins remain. Here, take them.
Before anyone could understand his intention, the white-robed young sword cultivator swept out his hand and forcefully hurled a large handful of lesser heat coins toward the distant Earth Immortal. The Earth Immortal frowned and flicked his sleeve. The 45 coins abruptly slowed, then began circling him like a glittering stream. He kept them 3 meters away, refusing to let even one approach his body. With extreme caution, he examined the coins individually, searching for hidden seals, poison, sword intent, or other tampering. There was nothing. Every lesser heat coin was genuine. Yuanxia and the surrounding vagrant cultivators stared with a mixture of envy and confusion. Could business truly be conducted in such a manner? The Golden Core Earth Immortal did not immediately accept the coins. 45 lesser heat coins equaled 5 million taels of mortal silver, a staggering fortune that even an Earth Immortal could not dismiss. Azure Phoenix Nation was famous for its wealth throughout the southeastern region of Eastern, treasured vile continent. Yet even so, the sum hovering before him rivaled the yearly taxes of lesser kingdoms, such as Fortune Mountain Nation. Chen Ping'an's payment changed the nature of the confrontation. The vagrant cultivators could no longer claim he was merely stealing their prize. By accepting their own valuation and offering full compensation, he seized the moral ground while forcing the Earth Immortal to reveal whether this was truly business or simple greed. Still studying the slowly revolving coin, the Earth Immortal's tone became noticeably more cautious.
May I ask where your immortal hometown is, young master?
I asked you the same question earlier. Did you not refuse to answer?
The Earth Immortal gave a faint smile.
Then may I ask whether desperation has forced you to spend this fortune purchasing the Earth Bull?
There is no need for you to concern yourself with that, Senior.
After a moment of consideration, Chen Ping'an retrieved another 5 lesser heat coins and tossed them into the
Please distribute these 5 lesser heat coins among the other esteemed immortals. Consider them my apology for arriving late, yet taking possession of the Earth Bull.
The expressions of the vagrant cultivators immediately improved. They would receive 5 lesser heat coins without risking another exchange of blows. Among the 20-odd cultivators were 4 alliances of different sizes. The smallest consisted only of Yuanxia and the 2 siblings. The strongest, both in numbers and cultivation, was led by the black-robed elder seated upon the giant black fox. That strongest alliance might claim 2 of the 5 coins, while the others divided the remainder. To them, the coins had truly fallen from the heavens. Yet instead of allowing the matter to settle, the Golden Core Earth Immortal smiled and cast another spark into the crowd's hearts.
Such extraordinary wealth and resolve, young master. You give away lesser heat coins as though they were mere snowflake coins. In that regard, I must admit my inferiority.
Those words instantly stirred the greed that had only just begun to settle. The vagrant cultivators lived with their heads tied to their waists, risking death for every fragment of treasure. How many lesser heat coins could any of them earn in an entire year yet? This young man scattered them with barely a change in expression. The Earth Immortal's praise was no compliment. It was a calculated blade. He could not yet determine Chen Ping'an's background, so he used greed to test whether the surrounding cultivators would attack on his behalf. If Chen Ping'an proved weak, the Earth Immortal would gain both the money and the Earth Bull without staining his own hands first. Chen Ping'an slowly swept his gaze across every face surrounding him. His expression remained calm, but the mountain pass seemed to grow colder.
I have spoken politely, and I have offered immortal coins in good faith. Now it is time for a proper discussion. Money does not fall from the sky in this world. I do still possess some lesser heat coins. If any of you covet them, you may rely upon your own abilities and try to take them. But if you cannot defeat me, then I will kindly ask for your life in exchange.
The warning fell without shouting, yet it carried more weight than a drawn sword. This was Chen Ping'an's boundary. He was willing to compensate them for lost profit, but he would not reward naked greed. Mercy came first. Consequence followed. Anyone who crossed that line could no longer claim ignorance. The Earth Immortal immediately stored away all 50 lesser heat coins. His smile returned, sharper than before.
Are you not afraid that I will simply leave and force you to clean up this mess? I cannot carry the Earth Bull upon my back and stroll through the streets. Departing with 50 lesser heat coins would be effortless. Are you not afraid that I will use these same 50 lesser heat coins to purchase your life? If that happens, everyone here, including me, will have earned twice the original amount. Why would we refuse such an opportunity?
Chen Ping'an extended one hand toward the open sky, gesturing as though inviting an honored guest to depart.
Certainly. Please feel free to leave. You may do whatever you wish so long as it makes you happy.
Behind that almost courteous reply lay a far less courteous thought. The Earth Immortal had angered Chen Ping'an for quite some time. If the man fled with the money or launched an attack, Chen Ping'an would finally possess a clean reason to kill him. His politeness was not weakness, it was the last door being left open before judgment. The Golden Core Earth Immortal fell silent. For the first time, he seriously weighed the risks hidden behind the young man's calm expression. Around him, the vagrant cultivators waited. No one dared act before the strongest person present made his decision. Then, from behind Chen Ping'an, the severely wounded Earth Bull slowly lifted its head. Its breath was weak, its vitality nearly extinguished, yet its gaze rested upon the back of the white-robed young man who had just spent a fortune to save it.
Esteemed immortal, why are you going to such lengths for me?
Chen Ping'an did not turn around. One hand rested upon his sword, nurturing gourd, as the mountain wind moved across his white robes.
I believe you are more human than many humans. It is that simple. From this day onward, I hope you will continue cultivating with sincerity. Then perhaps in the future, this world will gain another kind-hearted cultivator.
In a mountain pass filled with cultivators speaking of market prices, treasure shares, and profitable deaths, Chen Ping'an alone judged the Earth Bull by the kindness it had preserved. And perhaps that was the sharpest sword drawn that day, the belief that whether one was human or demon mattered less than what one chose when cruelty offered the easier path. The Golden Core Tier Earth Immortal suddenly smiled, as though a troublesome mystery had finally revealed its answer.
I see, so you are a disciple of legalism. No wonder.
Chen Ping'an had no idea how the man had reached such a conclusion. Yet the Earth Immortal appeared deeply familiar with the customs of the Azure Phoenix Nation. His eyes narrowed into smiling crescents, but beneath that pleasant expression, the pressure of a golden core cultivator remained as heavy as a mountain.
Then we should indeed spar with each other.
The air at the mountain pass tightened in an instant. Wind swept through the rocks, yet no one moved. Every vagrant cultivator understood what that single word spar could truly mean when spoken by an Earth Immortal. Vagrant cultivators survived by distrusting promises and abandoning alliances whenever profit demanded it. People died for wealth just as birds died for food. An additional 50 lesser heat coins was enough to turn hesitation into killing intent. They would gladly earn clean money, but none of them had ever sworn to refuse blood-stained silver. For cultivators without sex or powerful families behind them, advancement often depended less on talent than on usefulness. An imperial court or immortal force might offer them status, but the price of entry was frequently a task that respectable hands preferred not to touch. Some were ordered to assassinate important officials of enemy nations. Others were hired to avenge old grudges or settle hostilities between immortal factions. These were the hidden knives of the cultivation world missions that great powers wished completed, yet dared not openly claim. The Earth Immortal calmly swept his gaze across the gathering. He did not appear hurried or angry. He looked like a commander examining a battlefield that already belonged to him.
Are you aware that tens of thousands of people will be killed or displaced if the Earth Bull turns its body and manipulates the Earth veins?
The Earth Immortal hesitated. It was only a brief pause, but everyone heard the weight within it.
Given my cultivation, I am naturally aware of this.
Most of the vagrant cultivators showed no surprise. To them, knowing that innocent people might suffer and choosing to proceed regardless were hardly contradictory things. Only formation cultivator Yuanxia furrowed his brow. The reaction vanished almost immediately, hidden beneath the practiced composure of a man accustomed to dangerous company.
Then can you suppress the earthquake?
The Earth Immortal did not answer directly. Instead, he smiled, choosing explanation over commitment.
This is no simple task. We can follow your friend's suggestion and spend an exorbitant sum establishing formations throughout the surrounding region. Those formations could stabilize the earth veins and reduce the destruction caused by the earthquake. The other method would require a chi refiner who possesses a connate immortal treasure and has refined it into a bonded item. Only such a treasure could stabilize the mountains and suppress the earth veins.
His answer exposed the true balance of the confrontation. Killing the Earth Bull was easy. Saving it without sacrificing the surrounding population required money, formations, or an extraordinary treasure. Chen Ping'an was not merely defending a demon, he was forcing everyone present to confront the cost of their choices. Chen Ping'an remained silent. The Earth Immortal studied the young man in white for several breaths, as though trying to look beyond his cultivation base and discover what truly stood behind him.
I am certain we will meet again someday.
With that, the Earth Immortal appeared to abandon his intention of sparring. He looked toward the leaders of the 4 vagrant cultivator alliances, the black-robed elder seated upon the enormous 5-tailed black fox, formation cultivator Yuanxia, and the others. Using his mind's voice, he informed each leader where they should collect their remaining compensation and divide the spoils. Then, without another word, he rose upon the wind and departed. The vagrant cultivators followed soon afterward, yet they departed along different routes, revealing that each alliance had been assigned a separate meeting place and time. The Earth Immortal understood people, as well as he understood cultivation. His subordinates might not resent a small reward, but they would resent seeing another alliance receive more. By separating them, he prevented comparison from becoming rebellion. When the mountain pass finally grew quiet, Shanfeng gently punched Chen Ping'an on the arm, amusement returning to his pale face.
How impressive! You spend lesser heat coins as though they were snowflake coins.
Yuanxia had already forced himself back onto his feet. He sheathed his saber and ran his fingers through his beard, combing apart strands clumped together by blood.
We are safe for the moment, but that golden core fellow may still harbor ill intentions. He is probably one of the strongest cultivators in this region. If matters worsen, we should abandon our plan to remain here for the debate between Buddhism and Taoism. Leaving as soon as possible may be our safest choice.
The true martial sword that Chen Ping'an lent me, and your short saber, are we truly going to leave them at the Chief Military Governor's office?
Gave, not lent.
The correction was quiet, but absolute. To Chen Ping'an, a gift entrusted to a friend was not a debt waiting to be reclaimed. Yuanxia's heart ached at the thought of abandoning the weapons, yet his expression remained resolute.
The Chief Military Governor's office will not grow legs and run away. We will eventually have another chance to retrieve them. But if that office is the true culprit behind everything, going there now would mean walking directly into their trap. The Emperor of the Azure Phoenix Nation has always been unruly, and the chief military governor is among his most trusted subjects. We could be targeted from every direction. Worse still, we would have no way to explain ourselves, prove our innocence, or defend against accusations invented by people who already wanted us condemned.
Zhang Shanfeng had once been stubborn enough to accept wisdom only after suffering its consequences. Otherwise, he would never have abandoned Confucianism and entered the mountains to become a Taoist priest. Yet his journey south from the northern complete reed continent to the eastern treasured vial continent had changed him. He had seen too much, heard too much, and endured too many dangers to cling blindly to pride. After listening to Zhu Yuanxia, he no longer insisted on visiting the office. Chen Ping'an pondered in silence. At length, he formed a plan that would allow his two friends to visit the chief military governor's office without being dragged helplessly into the danger surrounding him.
I encountered a fated opportunity at a Confucian academy in the Parasol Leaf continent. There, I obtained a jade tablet capable of saving its bearer during a moment of mortal danger. The Azure Phoenix Nation is filled with people from every path, so we cannot lower our guard. However, possessing this tablet is almost equivalent to traveling beside a noble scholar from a Confucian academy. Ordinary golden core and nascent tier cultivators would hesitate to kill someone protected by it. Retrieving true martial and the short saber should therefore not be too difficult.
Sincerity did not mean throwing one's life away. Chen Ping'an had learned that lesson through his perilous confrontation with Du Mao. Trusting others was virtue. Ignoring every warning and stepping willingly into certain death was merely naivety wearing the mask of courage. By then, Pei Kaiyan and the 4 martial artists from the Lotus Flower, Blessed Land were approaching. All 5 were intensely curious about the young Taoist priest and the bloody, big-bearded saber wielder. These 2 clearly were not from Chen Ping'an's hometown. They appeared to be friends he had met while wandering across distant mountains and rivers. Zion and the others quickly measured their cultivation. Zhang Shanfeng was an ordinary Kai raffiner, whose realm could only be considered middling. Zhu Yuanxia was a saber-wielding 5th-tier martial artist, respectable. Certainly, but hardly overwhelming. And that was all. No hidden auras, no astonishing realm, no terrifying background that could be seen at a glance. Pei Kaiyan observed them from beside Chen Ping'an. She held her hiking pole, while the bamboo saber and bamboo sword, crafted by her master, hung proudly at her hip.
Greetings, big brother Taoist priest and saber-wielding uncle. I am Pei Qian, master's opening disciple.
Zhu Yuanxia burst into hearty laughter. Without spending a single coin, he had somehow gained an entire level of seniority. Zhang Shanfeng's shoulder had been pierced by the sword cultivator's bonded flying sword. Even after golden sore medicine had been applied, his face remained deathly pale. Yet when he saw the skinny girl declaring herself Chen Ping'an's first disciple, a smile tugged at his lips.
Hello, Pei Qian. How old are you this year?
I am only 7 years old. That is why I am so short.
Chen Ping'an immediately flicked her forehead. Pei Kaiyan had tried to preserve her dignity with a lie, only to suffer the consequences at once. Her expression turned sullen.
I am actually 11.
Chen Ping'an turned, squatted beside Zhu Yuanxia, and examined the martial artist's injuries.
Your wounds are severe. What do you intend to do?
Zhu Yuanxia and Zhang Shanfeng squatted as well. The big-bearded martial artist stroked his beard and considered the matter carefully.
Forget that slippery earth immortal for now. Consider only the sword cultivator riding the giant black fox and the other vagrant cultivators. They clearly came with malicious intentions. Had we stepped aside, they would have killed this earth bull immediately. Even now, if we abandon it and leave, it will still die. What you said before was correct. Money does not fall from the sky, nor does the wind simply blow it into our hands. Since we chose to help the earth bull, we might as well help it to the end. We will let it travel with us in its true form. Once its wounds recover, we can find a suitable earth vein where it can hide. But that places even more weight upon your shoulders, Chen Ping'an.
We have only been apart for a short while, and you are already speaking so politely to me?
Yuanxia threw back his head and laughed.
Politeness does not cost money.
Pei Kian nodded like a chick pecking grains of rice. Politeness and flattering words truly cost nothing. In her judgment, this big-bearded uncle was most likely a kindred spirit. Zhang and the other martial artists, however, saw further than Pei Kian. None of them had ever witnessed Chen Ping'an ask for another person's opinion in quite this manner. More importantly, Chen Ping'an accepted the words of Zhang Shanfeng and Zhu Yuanxia naturally, without reluctance or pretense. The four martial artists had endured many dangers and battles beside him. Sui Yaobian had even been killed several times. Throughout all of it, Chen Ping'an's decisions had carried an invisible strength, tough, decisive, and difficult to oppose, yet he had never failed to grant them the respect they deserved. What surprised them now was not that Chen Ping'an could command others, but that he knew when not to command. A person capable of making firm decisions while still listening sincerely to trusted companions possessed a quality rarer than cultivation talent, the foundation of true leadership. Even Zhang had to admit that his earlier praise had not been exaggerated. Chen Ping'an truly possessed the potential to become a powerful ruler. Had the two of them risen during the same chaotic era in the lotus flower-blessed land, they might not have become allies. With their strength, ambition, and opposing paths, they could easily have faced one another across a battlefield. Chen Ping'an turned his attention to the wounded earth bull.
Can you assume human form? If I remember correctly, demons at the Sea Observation Tier or Dragon Gate Tier should be capable of doing so. I have alchemical pills for treating injuries. Their effects would be stronger if you swallowed them while in human form.
Before Chen Ping'an and his companions had departed Old Dragon City, Lady Gui had sent them an osmanthus wood treasure box. It was not priceless, but it remained far beyond the means of ordinary people. Inside were 12 vials of alchemical pills suitable for earth immortals, the most cost-effective medicines for cultivators at each realm of the middle 5 tiers. The Dragon Gate tier Earth Bull, whose foundation of the Great Tao had been wounded, slowly shook its head.
This earth bull is different from ordinary mountain spirits and water beasts. The purer a demon's alignment with one of the 5 elements, the harder it becomes for that demon to assume human form. This earth bull must first advance to the golden core tier.
I understand. That is no problem. When we travel to the Chief Military Governor's office, we will avoid the provincial city whenever possible and follow the smaller paths through the mountains and along the rivers.
We know those routes quite well. During the past 2 years, we traveled throughout many regions of the Azure Phoenix Nation and the Fortune Mountain Nation.
Chen Ping'an removed an alchemical pill suitable for a Dragon Gate tier cultivator and instructed the Earth Bull to swallow it. 15 minutes later, the creature struggled back onto its feet. Wounds still covered its enormous body, but they no longer prevented it from walking normally. Earth element demons were renowned for powerful physiques and astonishing endurance. This Dragon Gate tier Earth Bull also revealed that it had refined a green-glazed mountain and water vase into one of its bonded items. The vase could gather and store the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Chen Ping'an immediately understood what the Earth Bull intended. Without hesitation, he handed over the entire vial of pills. The Earth Bull could store them inside the green glaze vase, slowly absorbing both their medicinal strength and the spiritual energy accumulated within the treasure. For Chen Ping'an, the vial was valuable. For the Earth Bull, it was the difference between a damaged future and a restored path. His decision revealed the strange arithmetic of the martial world. An object's price could be measured in coins, but its true worth depended on whose life it changed. Tears gathered in the Earth Bull's yellow eyes. Now standing once more, it looked toward the young man dressed in snow-white robes, its voice laden with guilt.
How can I repay such noble kindness, esteemed immortal? I have cultivated here for more than 200 years because the dragon vein attracted me. By chance I obtained 2 immortal treasures, but both have already been refined into my bonded items. Apart from them, I possess no natural treasures of heaven and earth. You saved my life and even repaired my Tao, yet
Pei Qian released a sorrowful sigh. In her heart, a far more practical tragedy was unfolding. She had almost lost 2 snowflake coins at Wasptail Ferry Station, and they had barely left Old Dragon City before another fortune disappeared into someone else's wounds. From Pei Qian's perspective, she had somehow become a bringer of financial disaster.
It is all right. When you have recovered, formed a golden core, and can travel the world in human form, you may visit my hometown if your sincerity remains. The mountains there are beautiful, the waters are clear, and spiritual energy is abundant. You will be very welcome.
Zhu Yuanxia interrupted, his tone carrying a deeper meaning.
why wait until it forms a golden core? Once its wounds recover, it should travel directly to your hometown. Perhaps it can form its golden core there instead. A sage guards the fortune of your homeland. Even if the Earth Bull turns its body during its breakthrough, there would be no need to fear an unexpected disaster.
Confusion filled the Earth Bull's eyes. It clearly did not understand the hidden significance behind Zhu Yuanxia's suggestion. Chen Ping'an carefully considered whether the proposal was truly viable. Before he could reach a conclusion, Zhu Yuanxia smiled and continued.
There is no hurry. We will travel together for some time, so we should first discover whether we can get along. If everything falls naturally into place, we can decide then. If it does not, we should simply part ways while preserving a good impression of one another. Should fate allow it, we will meet again. That would be far better than forcing ourselves to remain together until conflict destroys the good relationship we have already formed.
I agree.
Chen Ping'an had no objections. Thus, the group departed the mountain pass and slowly made its way toward the office of the chief military governor, a name famous throughout the Azure Phoenix Nation. Along the road, Chen Ping'an told Zhang, Shanfeng, and Zhu Yuanxia about his travels, naturally omitting matters that were too dangerous or sensitive to reveal. The young Taoist priest and the big-bearded martial artist, in turn, recounted the adventures they had experienced since the three friends parted at the Green Beetle shop. The Imperial Tang clan of the Azure Phoenix Nation followed an unusual tradition. Members of the imperial family could receive the title of king, yet they were not granted independent kingdoms to rule. Kings and county kings remained in residences within the capital. They possessed the right to live there, but not ownership. The moment they lost their titles, they also lost their homes. Across the nation stood 5 chief military governor offices: North, South, East, West, and Center. Their authority was immense. They transported grain to the imperial court and the army, controlled the trade of salt and iron, and supervised numerous affairs tied directly to the empire's survival. Ordinary rulers feared officials who accumulated too much power. They feared kings and nobles establishing private domains, severing their loyalty, and becoming sovereigns in everything but name. Yet for several hundred years, the Azure Phoenix Nation remained calm. Officials observed their boundaries. Nobles remained loyal. Not even those stationed far beyond the emperor's direct gaze appeared to harbor ambitions of rebellion. Such perfect loyalty was more unsettling than open disorder. A peaceful court could be proof of wise rule, but when every powerful clan behaved flawlessly for centuries, one could not help wondering what invisible force kept their ambitions chained. Compared with the war-ravaged central region of the eastern treasured Vile continent, the Azure Phoenix Nation resembled an otherworldly paradise of peace and order. Those wars had driven swarms of nobles and scholars from the north toward the south. The Azure Phoenix Nation, Fortune Mountain Nation, and Lofty Sky Nation accepted tens of thousands of refugees, with the Azure Phoenix Nation taking in the greatest number. Among the 5 chief military governors, the leaders of the northern, southern, eastern, and western regions had all earned their positions through military achievement or battlefield merit. Only the central chief military governor had inherited his office from his ancestors. For 300 years, the position had remained in the hands of the Y clan. Each generation relied upon a single direct descendant to continue the bloodline, making the clan appear forever on the verge of extinction. Yet the Y clan never collapsed. Generation after generation, it maintained an unbroken grip upon the office of Central Chief Military Governor. The current holder of that position was the same man who had asked Zhang, Shanfeng, and Zhu Yuanxia to leave behind the true martial sword and short saber. After inheriting his office, he stopped traveling for pleasure and sightseeing, spending most of his time inside his residence. Yet achievements and stories from his younger years ensured that his name remained renowned throughout the Azure Phoenix Nation and its 2 neighboring nations. Chief Military Governor Y was skilled at composing Taoist classics, writing cursive calligraphy, annotating Buddhist scriptures, and painting Buddhist statues. His paintings of Buddhist deities were considered peerless among his contemporaries. Even powerful figures within the imperial court found it exceedingly difficult to obtain a single work from his brush. Within the literati world, his reputation was flawless. He was said to possess a graceful bearing, an impressive manner, and a presence as lofty and otherworldly as pine trees whispering beneath the wind. Among noblewomen and young maidens in the capital, his fame was greater still. Stories claimed that during a mountain excursion in his youth, a woodsman mistook him for a transcendent immortal, fell to his knees, and kowtowed in astonishment. With the capital preparing to host a grand debate between Buddhism and Taoism, Chief Military Governor Y would travel north to oversee its safety. The emperor had permitted him to bring 6,000 elite soldiers and station them at critical locations throughout the capital. This was unmistakable proof of the emperor's trust. Their relationship was so close that rumors circulated within the cultivation world, suggesting that the bond between sovereign and subject went beyond ordinary intimacy. The emperors of the Lofty Sky Nation and Fortune Mountain Nation would also attend the debate, yet neither objected to Y bringing thousands of soldiers into the capital. Both regarded the arrangement as completely natural. That acceptance was strange. 6,000 elite soldiers could protect a capital, but in the wrong hands, they could also seize one. For 2 visiting emperors to show no concern meant that Y Liang's reputation, authority, or hidden guarantees extended far beyond ordinary politics. On this day, a burly young man arrived at the chief military governor's office. He kept a low profile, entering without alerting outsiders. Chief Military Governor Y Liang received him inside the study. Y Liang was only 30 years old, handsome and elegant enough to match every tale told about him. Despite holding an office of tremendous rank, he treated his visitor casually, neither maintaining deliberate distance nor displaying excessive hospitality. The burly young man was clearly familiar with him. Rather than sitting across the table, he stood before the bookshelf and leisurely flipped through several volumes.
Zhang, your clan must hold you in very high regard if they were willing to entrust this task to you. That also saves me a great deal of work. I will stand openly beneath the light while you remain hidden in the shadows. With that arrangement, I doubt the debate between Buddhism and Taoism near the end of spring will produce too many disturbances.
The visitor was none other than Jiang, the man who lived near the far end of narrow Wasp Alley at Wasptail Ferry Station. Having left the immortal ferry station that served as his second home, he had cast an illusion over his belt. Hidden beneath it was the iron chain taken from the iron lock well, a treasure he had refined into a bonded item. Such concealment was necessary. Carrying the chain openly through the city would attract far too many eyes. Jiang casually turned the pages of a heavily annotated book. Black and red ink covered its margins, proving that Wei Liang had studied the same volume repeatedly. He closed the book, turned around, and issued a warning.
You should not be so careless, Old Wei. Your emperor has created an enormous mess, and the situation has already become extremely complicated. Apart from me, several others from my clan may already be concealed within the capital. Watching events unfold, their cultivation bases will certainly not be low.
Wei Liang only smiled. He offered no reply. Jiang felt helpless before that effortless confidence.
A small nation such as the Azure Phoenix Nation actually dares to host a debate between Buddhism and Taoism? Worse still, you are deliberately turning it into an event that shakes the entire region. The Imperial Tang clan may not understand the danger hidden within competition among the three teachings, but surely you understand it, Old Wei. Why do you think the Cloud Forest Zhang clan relocated to the Eastern Treasured Vile continent all those years ago? After leaving Wasptail Ferry Station, I deliberately traveled through several bustling regions. I am not exaggerating when I say the streets are overflowing with qi refiners. That is already true in the outer territories. The capital will only be worse. Are all of you genuinely unafraid?
Jiang concern was not empty caution. A public debate between Buddhism and Taoism was never merely an exchange of doctrine. When great teachings competed for influence, sects, clans, courts, and hidden experts inevitably gathered behind them. A dispute of words could become a struggle over the future spiritual order of an entire region. Wei Liang placed a wooden case upon the table. The moment he opened it, an icy radiance spilled across the study. From within, he selected a so-called scholarly knife.
Because of your master, you possess some sympathy for vagrant and itinerant cultivators. I do not. Before the end of spring, I will cast several nets across the nation. Every vagrant cultivator with a criminal record will be captured, regardless of whether the crime was committed within the Azure Phoenix Nation or beyond its borders. I will act according to the law. They may be taken dead or alive. A single rat dropping can spoil an entire pot of congee. So what do you imagine will happen when nest after nest of rats pours into the capital?
Scholarly knives were ornaments traditionally displayed upon the desks of refined scholars. Though small, they were still regarded as weapons worthy of noble gentlemen. Nearly 10 ancestral scholarly knives rested neatly inside the wooden case. They could be divided into two groups: ancient blades that had witnessed countless summers and winters, and newer knives used only to cut sheets of fine Xuan paper. The older scholarly knives could also be called carving knives. In the distant past, when records were written upon bamboo and wooden slips, these small blades carved the words that became books. They had once been forged from iron, and in still older ages, from copper. Now they were fashioned from precious materials and treasured mainly as ornaments and collectibles, their original purpose long abandoned. Wei Liang held one scholarly knife in each hand. The first was made of bamboo, with the characters made by Zhensong Hall inscribed upon its hilt. The second was carved from white jade and decorated with dragon patterns. Its inscription read tempered 100 times by official craftsmen. Jiang returned the book to its shelf. His expression became complicated, and he released a quiet sigh.
And that is why you intend to kill so many vagrant cultivators in a single sweep?
Those who commit countless crimes are already seeking death. Dealing with official immortals of the mountains requires considerable effort. The vagrant cultivators should consider themselves fortunate that I am not personally hunting them down. Naturally, I also have selfish reasons for proceeding this way. Many fence-sitters have already become the eyes and ears of my office. When the time comes, they will have an opportunity to make a significant contribution. You see, when one acts according to stringent criteria, everything in this world becomes clean and simple.
Wei Liang never raised his head. His gaze remained fixed upon the white jade knife. With the bamboo blade, he gently tapped its surface. A crisp note rang through the study. Wei Liang closed his eyes and listened with unmistakable delight. The two knives reflected the man holding them. One belonged to the ancient act of carving laws and records into enduring form. The other was a refined ornament of authority. In Wei Liang's hands, scholarship and violence were not opposites, they were merely different edges of the same weapon. Despite their close friendship, anger stirred within Jiang.
Are you not concerned with whether your criteria are moral or immoral?
Wei Liang opened his eyes.
Immoral criteria are still criteria, are they not?
That answer revealed the most dangerous part of Wei Liang. He did not mistake cruelty for kindness, nor did he bother disguising one as the other. He valued order above morality, and a man who openly accepts the darkness of his own methods is far harder to sway than one who merely lies to himself. His expression remained calm as he set aside the dispute and changed the subject with a faint smile.
Let us not discuss matters upon which we are destined to disagree. During my most recent journey, I encountered an extraordinarily interesting fellow disciple of legalism. His friends left 2 objects within my office. If you are interested, remain here and wait a few more days.
Thus, while Chen Ping'an and his companions advanced toward the chief military governor's office, Wei Liang was already waiting behind its walls. One man believed he had encountered a fellow disciple of legalism. The other did not even know how that misunderstanding had begun. When their paths crossed again, the true martial sword and short saber might prove to be the least dangerous matters awaiting them. Deep within the mountains, where green ridges embraced a limpid lake, Chen Ping'an and his companions discovered an abandoned bamboo house. Years of wind and rain had dimmed its former splendor, yet its elegant frame still revealed the taste of the wealthy recluse who had once lived there. Judging by the house's position beside the water, its former owner had surely been fond of fishing beneath the drifting clouds. The travelers decided to rest there, and each person naturally found something to do. Chen Ping'an entered the bamboo forest and cut down 2 mature stalks, one long and one short. By the time he returned, Zhu Lion had already kindled a campfire. Chen Ping'an squatted beside the flames and slowly passed the bamboo above the heat. Curing it this way would strengthen the stalks, making the future fishing rods less likely to snap if some large creature beneath the lake suddenly seized the bait. He handed the shorter stalk to Pei Kian and showed her how to rotate it above the fire. As always, the little girl watched every movement of her master and imitated him with grave concentration. Inside the bamboo house, Zhu Lion and Zhu Yuanxia sat far from the others, exchanging knowledge of a far less dignified sort. Zhu Lion had taken out the so-called immortal book bestowed upon him by Old Man Zun, a scandalous volume concerning the private battles between men and women. Nearby, Zhang Shanfeng and Liu Beixiang sat upon the floor playing Go. Wei Zion crouched beside the board, silently waiting to see who would emerge victorious, just as he always did. The yellow earth bull kept watch in the surrounding forest. Though the mountains seemed peaceful, It remained vigilant, guarding the bamboo house from dangers hidden beneath the tranquil scenery. With no strangers nearby, Sui Yaobian left the house and removed her boots upon the bamboo foundation, which floated over the water like a raft. She sat at the edge and lowered her jade-like feet into the cool lake, resting deep infatuation across her knees. One hand rested near the mouth of the scabbard, and the other near its tip. She gazed into the distance without speaking, allowing the crisp mountain air and the faint ripples of the lake to wash over her. When the two bamboo rods were ready, Chen Ping'an swung his own several times, testing how far it could bend without breaking. Pei Kaiyan stood beside him and copied every motion, brandishing her shorter rod with equal seriousness. The master and disciple then tied fishing lines to the bamboo. Pei Kaiyan's knots were clumsy in several places, so Chen Ping'an patiently untied them, fastened the hooks again, and showed her how each small detail should be handled. To Chen Ping'an, teaching had never meant merely passing down powerful techniques. Even the tying of a fishing knot required patience, attention, and the willingness to correct one's mistakes, qualities far more difficult to cultivate than brute strength. They walked to the lakeside and turned over stones in search of bait. Beneath the damp rocks, they found small crustaceans resembling mole crickets, lively enough to tempt whatever fish lurked below. In the end, Chen Ping'an did not cast his own line. He let Pei Kaiyan fish alone and placed his rod inside the jade pendant minimization treasure that Zhang Deifeng had given him. The treasure still held the tattered straw sandals he had never thrown away. Alongside them were ordinary fishing lines and hooks bought in the marketplace, as well as more valuable wine, including Wellwater Immortal wine. There was also a yellowing parasol leaf containing 2 mountain protection formations derived from Peace and Tranquility Mountain and the Planchette Riding Sect. Within that same leaf rested the large sum of grain rain coins paid to him as compensation by the parasol leaf sect. Pei Kaiyan had always been impatient by nature. Only after traveling beside Chen Ping'an, being forced to read books, and practicing her handwriting day after day, had she gained even a thin layer of patience. She stared fiercely at the lake, as though determination alone could force a giant azure fish weighing more than 50 kilograms to bite her hook in the very next instant. While Pei Kaiyan waited for her impossible catch, Chen Ping'an turned his attention toward the 4th meditation stance of the mountain shaking guide, the heaven and earth stance. The name was grand enough to shake mountains, yet the method recorded in the manual was exceedingly strange. Its circulation of true Kai combined movement and stillness, demanding that the practitioner overturn the ordinary alignment of the body. A practitioner first had to stand upside down upon both palms. The next stage required using 2 fists, while the final stage demanded balancing on a single finger from each hand. After attaining stability, one had to walk in that inverted position. The mountain shaking guide boldly proclaimed that one who mastered this stance would become a pillar between heaven and earth, forcing the world itself to churn and rotate with every movement of the fists. It was no wonder the barefoot old man in the bamboo building on Downtrodden Mountain had casually dismissed the manual as useless in every regard, except for its towering ambition and shameless boasting. Chen Ping'an lightly slapped the bamboo floor and flipped upward with effortless grace, balancing his entire body upon a single palm. Pei Kaiyan turned around. The sight of her master standing upside down was so peculiar that laughter nearly escaped her lips. Still inverted, Chen Ping'an pointed toward the lake with his free hand, reminding her that the fish would not hook itself. Pei Kaiyan obediently faced the water again. Behind her, Chen Ping'an shifted from his palm to a fist, then reduced his support to a single finger. His body remained straight as a spear, while true Kai flowed according to the heaven and earth stance. None of the physical demands troubled him. Closing his eyes, Chen Ping'an pressed the index and middle fingers of his free hand together before his chest. He was already approaching the barrier between the 12th and 13th stops of the 18 stops technique taught to him by Liang. Originally, There had been no need for him to hurry. Now, however, the situation had changed. At the dust medicinal shop in Old Dragon City, Chen Ping'an had taught the 18 stops technique to Pei Kaiyan. After leaving Wasp Tail Ferry Station, the little girl had happily earned 2 or 3 copper coins, then casually revealed that she could already circulate 12 stops without obstruction. What made the revelation even more alarming was her disappointed tone. To Pei Kaiyan, reaching 12 stops already seemed unbearably slow. Chen Ping'an had felt helpless. He could only warn her not to grow conceited or impatient, and to advance one step at a time. His anxiety did not arise from jealousy. A true master should rejoice when the disciple surpasses the teacher. What frightened Chen Ping'an was not how high Pei Kaiyan might climb, but what direction she might choose once she stood beyond his reach. One day, this mischievous opening disciple might reach the same height as her master, leave him behind, and continue ascending until she could look down upon the entire world. Chen Ping'an had personally told Zhang Deifeng that disciples need not remain inferior to their masters. The ancient teaching that indigo came from bluegrass, yet could become darker than bluegrass, expressed the very same truth. Yet as Pei Kaiyan's Tao mentor and Tao guardian, he carried a responsibility that strength alone could not fulfill. What if her great Tao veered from the correct path one day? Would he treat her as he had treated the young flood dragon in the flood dragon trench, tossing over snake gall pebbles and declaring that if the favor became negative karma, he would draw his sword and sever it with one slash? The question cut more deeply than any blade. Could Chen Ping'an truly strike down the disciple he had raised, and even if his heart became cold enough? What if Pei Kaiyan's cultivation had already risen so far that his sword could no longer reach her? His thoughts returned to the lotus flower-blessed land, where the old Taoist priest from the East Sea had led him across countless mountains and rivers. There, Chen Ping'an had watched a group of apparently noble court officials rise with the intention of helping the common people and strengthening the nation. In only 80 years, those same men had lost themselves in decadence and corruption. Each still believed himself righteous, and therefore none could imagine that he might be wrong. Whenever one of them faced criticism in court, the others defended him without first distinguishing right from wrong. They condemned political opponents in righteous tones, then gathered beneath the willows to drink farewell wine and lament that beasts and villains had seized control of the government. Within the cultivation world, some literati even maintained disciples whose duty was to manipulate public discourse, fabricate accusations, and rewrite history through baseless speculation. Power did not always corrupt through obvious cruelty. Sometimes it began with friends refusing to question one another, with loyalty replacing judgment, and with every selfish act being dressed in the robes of righteousness. Since Chen Ping'an had begun considering the creation of his own force, he had to prevent such decay before it took root. If he could not even educate his opening disciple properly, how could he claim that his future force would not become another parasol leaf sect? After several centuries, how could he guarantee that he himself would never become another Duma? His original plan had been simple. Reading and study would teach Pei Kaiyan etiquette, while martial practice would temper her body. Under ordinary circumstances, this would resemble learning to crawl before walking and learning to walk before running. Each stage would provide a stable foundation for the next. But Pei Kaiyan's martial talent was too immense, and her fortune too profound. Her body seemed ready to race ahead, while her understanding of principles was still learning how to take its first steps. What if she eventually decided that the teachings in books were merely burdens forced upon her by Chen Ping'an? What if reasoning with others became too troublesome and dull? With powerful fist techniques in her hands and a saber and sword at her waist, she might simply act according to her desires, abandoning moral vigilance. self-restraint, and respect for proper conduct. Not long ago, Chen Ping'an had spent 50 lesser heat coins without hesitation, hoping that the world might one day gain a kind-hearted golden core tier great demon. Yet if he raised a 9th or 10th tier martial artist who cared only for personal gain and ignored right and wrong, even 50,000 grain rain coins might not be enough to repair the disaster. This was the true weight of mentorship. Teaching someone to become strong could be accomplished through techniques and treasures. Teaching someone how to use that strength required a lifetime of vigilance, and even then, success was never guaranteed. Still inverted upon one finger, Chen Ping'an turned the problem over again and again. No perfect answer appeared. Was he supposed to sever Pei Kaiyan's martial path with his own hands, merely because of a distant possibility? At the mountain pass, when confronting vagrant cultivators who harbored malicious intentions but had not yet caused tragedy, Chen Ping'an had chosen to reason with them. The worst outcome had not yet occurred, so he refused to use fists and blades merely because they offered an easier solution. During the conflict at the border inn, he had told others to ask their own conscience. But after the battle in Old Dragon City, and after Taoist Nun Huangting revealed what later happened within the Parasol Leaf sect, his thinking had begun to change. Chen Ping'an now believed that in certain situations, one had to take a small step backward. The size of that step depended upon the people involved and the circumstances surrounding them. A clear conscience was important, but conscience alone could not resolve every conflict. Without examining consequences, positions, and the different weights of competing principles, even sincere righteousness could become a weapon. Pei Kaiyan was growing angry with the fish for refusing to honor her bait when a bead of water suddenly struck her cheek. She turned and found Sui Yaobian gesturing silently with her eyes. Following Sui Yaobian's gaze, Pei Kaiyan saw Chen Ping'an still standing on his hands. His brow was drawn into a deep frown, an expression rarely seen upon his face. Sui Yaobian withdrew the finger that had flicked the water and resumed gazing into the distance, as though nothing had happened. Pei Kaiyan gently placed her fishing rod on the ground and crept toward her master. Squatting beside him, she studied his troubled expression. Perhaps her master was slow to recognize his own sorrow. Maybe he had only now begun regretting the 50 lesser heat coins he had spent. Chen Ping'an opened his eyes and looked at the skinny little girl before him. Her face was still tanned from constant exposure to wind and sunlight.
What's wrong?
Pei Kaiyan considered her words carefully.
Is something troubling you, Master? You can tell me about it.
Chen Ping'an pushed lightly against the ground, flipped upright, and sat cross-legged. For a moment, he hesitated. The matters weighing upon him concerned a distant future, and the principles involved were profound. Was Pei Kaiyan still too young to bear them? Would his worries become a heavy stone laid across her small shoulders? He raised the sword-nurturing gourd and drank a small mouthful of medicinal wine. A breeze carrying the scent of mountain forests and clear water swept over him, easing the tension in his mind. A human life rarely reached 100 years, yet people often carried enough worries for 1,000. Chen Ping'an squinted after tasting the wine and quietly mocked himself. Had he finally begun to resemble a scholar?
This matter concerns you. Do you want to hear it?
Pei Kaiyan gulped. Her mind immediately raced through every bit of mischief she had caused during the journey. Whatever this was, it did not sound like something that could be settled with 1 or 2 flicks to the forehead.
Can I choose not to listen? Could you tell me after I've grown older and become more sensible?
Chen Ping'an pouted her head.
This isn't about whether you've behaved well or badly. They're only some thoughts of mine. You won't have your forehead flicked or your ears twisted.
Relieved, Pei Kaiyan immediately straightened her back. She adjusted the bamboo saber and bamboo sword tied at the same hip, then assumed the solemn posture of a devoted disciple receiving a supreme teaching.
Please begin, Master. Your disciple shall listen with the utmost respect.
Chen Ping'an shifted until they were seated directly opposite one another.
Suppose your saber, sword, and fist techniques become stronger than mine one day. Then suppose we encounter a matter that I believe is right, but you believe is wrong. What will you do?
I'll listen to you, Master. What else would I do?
Think about it more carefully.
Pei Kaiyan scratched her head until her small brow tightened into a frown.
But that truly is what I think. Whatever you call correct must be correct. Whatever you call wrong must be wrong.
Chen Ping'an did not answer. Pei Kaiyan had no choice but to continue pondering. Her thoughts wandered like a traveler crossing distant mountains, while her master patiently waited without pressing her for an immediate answer. Suddenly, Pei Kaiyan's eyes brightened with another question.
Master, if I really become stronger than you, exactly how strong would that make me?
Take Du Mao of the Parasol Leaf Sect as an example, the one Huang Ting calls Old Criminal Du. Imagine reaching the Ascension tier.
Chen Ping'an smiled before adding a necessary condition.
For now, consider only the cultivation base. Set aside whether the person is good or evil.
Pei Kaiyan gasped as though an entire mountain of treasure had appeared before her.
Good heavens! If I'm that powerful, won't my home be filled with mountains of gold and silver? Could I even count all of it? Counting would be exhausting, but if I don't count carefully, someone might steal a few coins. Ah, the troubles of the wealthy! When will I finally suffer from such worries?
Watching the skinny girl grow increasingly distressed over riches she did not possess, Chen Ping'an could not suppress a laugh. He leaned forward and patted her head.
In my hometown lives a militarian sage called Master Ruan. He is exceptionally skilled at forging swords, but looking back, there was something else he handled very well. When choosing disciples, Master Ruan considered more than aptitude and talent. He asked whether they shared the same aspirations and whether they could walk together upon the great Tao. He did not want disciples with extraordinary talent but poor character, nor did he want disciples who would blindly defend their master and attack others without first judging the matter.
Pei Kaiyan opened her mouth as though she wanted to speak, but hesitation stopped her. In the end, she remained silent.
So let us return to my earlier question. If you and I disagree one day, you must not assume that I am always right. Your master is no sage. I can also make mistakes. We should do what we're doing now. Sit opposite one another. Explain why we believe something is right or wrong. Examine each reason and listen to whoever speaks more reasonably. I, Chen Ping'an, will not silence you merely because I am your master. But if you, Pei Chan, become so powerful that you could kill me with a casual punch, you must not ignore my reasoning and act however you please.
Chen Ping'an was not demanding obedience. He was teaching Pei Kaiyan that neither seniority nor strength could determine truth. In his eyes, the great Tao between master and disciple had to leave room for disagreement. Tears immediately filled Pei Kaiyan's eyes. She did not fully understand the principles, but the thought of becoming strong enough to kill her master with one punch was unbearably painful. She turned away and secretly wept, refusing to look at the master, who had suddenly begun speaking such dreadful nonsense. Chen Ping'an returned to his former place and faced the lake, where the spring breeze stirred layer after layer of gentle ripples. He raised one hand, moving it gradually higher, as though drawing circles of increasing size in the air.
Reasons and principles also possess different levels of importance. It is much like the circles of different sizes that I once drew upon a mountain. In a ruined temple within the colorful garment nation, I once met a young fox spirit that loved stories about gifted scholars and beautiful women. It enjoyed frightening travelers, yet it never truly harmed anyone. Instead, It even sheltered people from wind and rain. And on this journey, we encountered the yellow earth bull, which would rather die than turn its body and endanger innocent people. But does the existence of such righteous demons mean we should overlook the sacrifices of the sword cultivators who have faced south for tens of thousands of years, guarding the sword Qi Great Wall against the demon tribe? Should we pity the demon tribe and accuse those sword cultivators of cruelty merely because some demons are kind-hearted?
With her back still turned, Pei Kaiyan sniffled through her tears.
I understand that. Such people fail to consider which wrong came first, and they fail to distinguish between reasons of greater and lesser importance.
Compassion without order could become injustice. A single virtuous member of the demon tribe could not erase an invasion, just as one evil human could not condemn the entire human world. Chen Ping'an wanted Pei Kaiyan to judge each matter within its proper sequence and scale. Chen Ping'an drew the largest circle yet and raised his hand high above his head.
I believe only figures such as the scholarly sage and Master Bai, the one rumored to have forged a great ding for humanity and illustrated the Mountain Scouring album, possess the standing to speak of truly unalterable principles. We remain unimaginably far from that level, yet the scholarly sage has imprisoned himself within the forest of virtue, while Master Bai is confined inside the mighty suppressing pagoda. Does that mean we should abandon reason because it appears useless? Does it prove that good deeds never bring good karma, and evil deeds never bring evil karma?
Pei Kaiyan finally turned around and shuffled closer until she was sitting beside him. Her head remained lowered.
But some wicked people really do live better lives than good people.
That is why the old monk of Heart Manifestation Temple in the Southern Garden Nation's capital said that this world has always been indebted to good people.
Then what are we supposed to do?
Chen Ping'an did not drink from the sword nurturing gourd. Instead, he retrieved a pot of osmanthus wine from his minimization treasure, broke the seal, and took a small sip.
The answer is probably waiting for us inside the books.
It was not a triumphant answer, nor a perfect one. Yet perhaps that honesty carried greater value than false certainty. Chen Ping'an could not promise Pei Kaiyan that the world was fair. He could only teach her to keep searching for the principles that might make it fairer. In the distant forest, the yellow earth bull lay upon the ground and silently contemplated those words. Sui Yaobian's expression remained indifferent, but she too had listened to every word exchanged between master and disciple. Pei Kaiyan wiped away her tears. The heaviness in her heart gradually loosened, and a mischievous smile returned to her face.
Master, not long after we left Wasptail Ferry Station, you hummed a tune while cooking rice. Why did it have no fixed lyrics? Can you hum it again? I want to learn it.
My best friend taught me that melody. Its words can be changed however the singer wishes. Back home, people use it to tease and scold one another, to ease their fatigue while working, and also to accompany wine.
Chen Ping'an drank from the osmanthus wine and began humming softly. Then he pointed toward Pei Kaiyan, shaping new lyrics for the melody.
Little waiter with ink on her hands, you've learned a few characters and filled your belly with knowledge, yet not one merchant will trade you more than a handful of copper.
He was singing about her. Pei Kaiyan's eyes shone with delight, and she immediately joined in with lyrics of her own.
Stinky tofu smells wonderful, but my purse is too empty to buy even one piece.
Chen Ping'an smiled knowingly and continued the improvised song.
Spirits hide among the mountains, ghosts drift beneath the rivers. I turn around in alarm and discover that many years have passed since I left home.
Then it must be time to eat stinky tofu.
Chen Ping'an took another sip and pointed in a random direction. Unfortunately, His finger landed precisely where Sui Yaobian was seated. There was no time to retreat, so he continued singing.
Young lady beside the water, from which distant land did you come? You carry the fragrance of orchids, yet sorrow gathers upon your face. What a pitiful sight.
Pei Kaiyan nodded with tremendous seriousness before providing the obvious explanation.
She cannot eat stinky tofu. Naturally, her fate is unbearably tragic.
Chen Ping'an narrowed his eyes and pointed toward the sky, allowing the tune to wander wherever it pleased.
Tell me, learned scholar, what can be done? A small paper kite hangs helplessly from the branches while the blazing sun scorches it from above.
Pei Kaiyan clutched her stomach and burst into laughter.
It's time for stinky tofu. The fragrance has reached the heavens.
Inside the bamboo house, Zhang Shanfeng and Zhu Yuanxia exchanged amused glances. Zhu Lion closed his eyes and smiled, bobbing his head gently to the rhythm. Liu Beixiang patted his knees in time with the tune. In an exceedingly rare display, Sui Yaobian did not become angry at being dragged into the song. She covered her mouth with one hand and smiled broadly, her eyes narrowing beneath the warm sunlight. At some unknown moment, Wai Zion had wandered to the entrance of the bamboo house. He squatted there with his cheek resting in one hand, quietly watching the tan little girl's skinny figure. Only moments earlier, Chen Ping'an had been burdened by fears stretching 1,000 years into the future. Now, beside the lake, those fears gave way to laughter. Perhaps this was also part of guiding a disciple, not merely warning her about distant darkness, but giving her enough warmth to remember why the righteous path was worth walking. With green mountains rising behind them and the clear lake glittering beneath the sun, master and disciple continued their lively duet. Their imperfect song drifted across the water, mingling with the spring breeze and carrying the quiet happiness of travelers who had briefly found a place resembling home.